Welcome to the Industrial Talk Podcast with Scott MacKenzie. Scott is a passionate industry professional dedicated to transferring cutting-edge, industry-focused innovations and trends while highlighting the men and women who keep the world moving. So put on your hard hat, grab your work boots, and let's go.
All right, once again, welcome to Industrial Talk. Thank you very much for joining, and thank you for your continued support of the #1 industrial-related podcast in the universe that celebrates you industry professionals all around the world. You are bold, you are brave, you dare greatly, you innovate, you collaborate, you solve problems each and every day. That's why we celebrate you on Industrial Talk. Thank you very much. All right, we're broadcasting from PowerGen. PowerGen is in Dallas, Texas this year, and if you're in the power business and you're not here, you are missing out. Now, if you're here, you need to come by and say hello, but then again, this is tape delayed, so this is irrelevant, so that's how this podcast works. All right, we have in the hot seat, Joe Patch, the fourth.
Yeah.
So and we're going to be talking about resources, people, and how things are going. So let's get cracking. Hi, Joe. How do you say your company's name again?
Confio Group.
Confio Group.
Confio Group. Yeah. You know what it means?
No, have no clue.
Yeah. It means trust. Spanish.
Really?
Right?
That means really?
Yeah. Developing trust. Yeah. With our clients, with the niche, with the space in general. Right.
I like it.
Yeah. It's beautiful. My wife came up with it, so I got to give her all the credit. You know, I can't take it.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
Hey, before we get going into the topic of conversation on Confio, I'm trying to learn Spanish, by the way.
Are you? Yeah.
Are
you making progress?
No. Clearly, I didn't know that this means trust. Clearly, I've dropped the ball on that one. Before we get going, let's give us a little background on Joe. Where does Joe come from? And by the way, we have a mutual friend. His brother-in-law was on the podcast too, and he didn't disappoint.
No, he delivered. I got big shoes to fill to
you
follow
do.
Chris.
You do.
Yeah, Chris
Sucks
nailed
to
it.
be you.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when you go second, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I kind of started out in the power business in the early 2000s after I finished graduate school, joined the family firm. So my father started a firm back in the late 80s, early 90s. My dad was ex-Bechtel.
Yeah,
the Bechtel days, right? And did a number of power projects, always on the generation side. When he started his own firm, he kind of fell into that same niche. So, when I picked up into the company, he'd been around, probably almost 15 years at that point. And, it was a great opportunity. Really my background is more business. I'm not an engineer by degree. But you could argue that growing up in our house at the dinner table with a licensed civil engineer that worked power projects, we got a hell of an education on a daily basis. And I got some unique opportunities, which was really cool. So a little off topic in this, and I wish he was here. Maybe I'll bring him back. But I brought my 13-year-old son, Anthony, to join us here, at this conference this week, because I wanted him to see at a young age what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
Particularly in the world of energy, because it's so dynamic.
Oh.
The demand is all-encompassing. I mean, these problems that we're trying to solve aren't going anywhere in our lifetime or his lifetime. So I think it's ripe with opportunity. And my dad, in his own way, back in the day, he would take me to projects. And it was awesome. And granted, you got, at 10, 11, 12 years old, I was excited about, the hotel room and the diner. We're going to get to go eat for breakfast. But I can remember a number of the projects that he brought me on, just the things that you see, the scale of some of the projects that he did, I think were really eye-opening. He was always been on the industrial side, so I have more appreciation for that than I do residential or commercial when it comes to, build and scale size. Just some of it too, just the culture of what is it to be on a job site, safety, staying out of certain areas, keeping an eye on the equipment, and then, just being around some of the trades, I think was fantastic. My dad, a great engineer, I love him, but he always enjoyed having the boots on. He always enjoyed being in the field, always had a deep respect, enjoyed the construction, and always got along well with the guys executing the work. And so that bridge is always seemed to be there when I go out. And so being able to have the relationship of what was it like to be in the trailer and or the temporary office, kind of see what does the controller do, what does the scheduler do, what's the CM thinking about, what are the superintendents dealing with, was all really good. But then part of the day would be outside in the field. and being around some of the craft guys and just seeing, kind of how they make a living. It was really, really neat. And it always razz you, because they always end up giving me the white hard hat, although I'd not earned it. But so that was always kind of fun too. But just getting a chance to see it and live it firsthand left a deep impression on me. And I like to think with what we do today in staffing and recruiting in this particular niche that we have a real sense of, I can read a job description, I know what this role does, but really on a deeper level. What's it like to really live that role? What's it like to be out on site in the elements, dealing with 1,000 things that you're going to have to deal with, particularly in a construction situation, changes in design, et cetera. It really kind of brought it home for me in a really special way. So, it was just kind of early background, really. Yeah.
My dad was, he worked for Southern California Edison as a lineman too. Yeah. And as a boy, I would go to the yard and I would walk around the yard. And we weren't as back then as safety focused as we are today.
I believe it.
And just suffice it to say that I was able to ride buckets and do the stuff that, kids would want to do.
But not be so much allowed to do today. I get it.
Not even close.
Not even close. That's great.
And those individuals were very impactful.
Yeah.
And definitely what they did it meant a lot to me. And it was like, my dad is so cool,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Take us through some staffing. I've had a number of conversations specifically around staffing and the challenges of staffing. And the workforce development and workforce and attracting. And from my point of view, and given what I see here at this event,
right,
you are absolutely right. The market is abuzz.
Oh, man.
It's on a trajectory that is just steep.
Yep. That's a good word.
And I mean, you need people.
You need people.
How do you do it?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? And I think there's a couple ways to come at it. It's a tough one. It's really a tough one because, I can think of several of our clients that are kind of boutique engineering firms, and they just haven't minted as many engineers in days past as the world, and particularly this space, requires today. So it's a challenge, right? You're kind of working with half a deck, and that makes it really, really difficult. And I think that's just going to take some time to kind of work itself out, particularly I would say in the hard engineering disciplines, right? So structural, civil, mechanical, electrical, particularly the guys that are licensed. I would argue, this is something that I was invited to speak at the University of Arkansas for their kind of graduating seniors.
Yeah. And
that's one of the advices I gave to the kids. I said, hey, look, as you start to move through your career, be real mindful of the PE. Be very mindful of it, because it will open doors, it will create opportunities for you, it'll put you in a position that you will not be without it. So, think carefully. It comes with more responsibility.
I have to interrupt. PD?
PE, professional
PE.
engineer. Yeah, PE license. Yeah.
I heard PD and I'm going, what, professional development? What?
Yeah. Well, you got to keep up with the professional development too to keep the PE. But it opens up some different opportunities for you, particularly, depending on what you want your career track to look like. But, all that to be said, I think there's a flip side to this space too. It's finding the people that recognize, and I think that's part of it, particularly like podcasts like yourself, getting the word out. You'd mentioned it's a steep curve.
It is.
There's so many issues that have to be solved on the energy side, and if people knew it, I think that opens the door to say, more people to give it a look. So I think that's part of it, is you got to open the door, get the message out, so more people are properly understand some of the constraints that we deal with in this country on the power side, and that the opportunities that are massive that are there. And I would argue too, as far as these newer technologies. I had someone on my podcast a couple of months ago. We talked about hydrogen and how the hydrogen space is so new that if you got into hydrogen today, within 5 years, you're a player. Where else can you do that as a young graduate? You're early in your career.
You're touching on some interesting points, specifically hydrogen. Yeah. I know that the technology's not there yet,
right?
But hydrogen's there. I mean, it's there. But how do you?
Sure.
How do you? Are you an advocate? Let's say you mentioned it. I'm not minting engineers like I used to. Okay,
right.
That's a problem.
It is. Yeah, it is. And a great opportunity for those that are willing to go into engineering.
Yeah.
massive opportunity.
Is there a role for sort of like that apprenticeship type of arrangement where, because I as a lineman, I went through an apprenticeship program
Right.
to learn from old crusty dogs.
Yeah,
they
yeah.
weren't being taught in school. It was on the field.
I think there's two things there, right? I think one is, I think the trades are a great place to go. And and one of the things I'll refer to is, looking at some of the power projects that we have staffed and recruited for. It used to be back in the day where you have these project developers that, that would put out bids and say, look, we need an electrical contractor for this job. And they were really in the driver's seat when it came to selecting kind of who they wanted. Now, I think that role is reversed a little bit. I've seen some of the premier electrical contractors in this country, particularly on the West Coast, are really in the driver's seat. And they're more, I would say, interviewing the developers. What do you got? All right, we'll get back to you. What do you have? What do you have? We're going to pick the project that we think is the best scenario for us across our criteria. Part of it's going to be economics, but part of the likelihood of success. What's the leadership look like? Does the schedule look real? I mean, is this something we can actually build in our lifetime, or is it just, smoke and mirrors? And so, I think the trades are an incredible opportunity where you can be a part of this whole energy mix, and I think carve out a wonderful future for yourself. Now, I think on the flip side, you look at something like hydrogen, you can come out of the sciences, but you can also come out of business. And with business, again, if you flange up with some of these developers, some of these startups that we've supported in Silicon Valley that are doing some interesting things with hydrogen and even, I would call clean tech, there's roles for you outside of the hard sciences, right? You've got the finance side, you got the operations side, you got some of the marketing PR side that I think are for the taking if you want to get into this space and want to make a difference. So, there will always be a role for the hard sciences and for the technical side, certainly anything in the energy space. But when you look at a company, it's so much more than just the tech to build a good, solid, profitable company that people want to continue to do business with. And it's all those other roles that are, I would say, indispensable and necessary and required to make that company work and to continue to push us deeper to solve these problems in the energy space. So there are credible opportunities out there.
How does your organization facilitate that? How do I connect with you, and what's your role?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, our company, Confio Group, right? We specialize in energy recruiting and staffing. I think maybe one of the strongest things we got going for us at the moment is just kind of the time we've spent in the space, kind of being around the work, the relationships we built, some of the wonderful people I've been able to see here at PowerGen this year that we've done projects with, people I've had on the podcast, catching up, how we doing, where you going, gaining those insights. So I think a lot of that networking has been very powerful. And I think in days past, I would have underestimated that. We do networking, but the older I get, the more I see, there's really a lot there. And I think that can serve as a real foundation of stone in the company that you're a part of. I think getting out to shows like this has certainly been good for exposure. I think some of the social media that we're doing has been good. But I also think, too, I like to have organic discussions with leaders of companies. And I think the podcast helps with that. But, two, I'm genuinely interested in the problems that you're facing and how you solve those particular problems. I think it's important for us to put a premium on our candidate relationship because people talk. And so if you treat people right through the entire process, one of the things that we are pretty adamant about is staying in the loop from day one all the way till the person signs on, shows up, continues to work through those first phases of work. So continuing to manage that experience from the client side as well as the candidate side. Most of our work is done on retainer, and that's a big one too, because with the retainer relationship, you're able to build, I think, a deeper relationship between us as the recruiters and the client, and you're really able to get into some of those pain points that I think come with having skin in the game and really desiring a trusted partner or a weaponized asset, whatever you want to call it, so that you have somebody in the niche daily that is really working on your behalf at a deep level. And I think that's so important. As I talked to a fantastic candidate today, it's interviewing for one of our clients at a very, very senior level of the organization. And one of the greatest compliments that I think we can get, and one of the questions I like to ask in an early stage interview is everything we've provided to you Was it as it took place? And in this case, what I did was I brokered a meeting, a Teams meeting between him and the CEO of the company, private, 1 hour. Just wanted to get these two on the same page, because the person they're bringing in is going to be collaborating at that level of the company. And I think it needed to be a one-off. The person that we're interviewing is in high demand. They're in a great spot, but I think there's some unique opportunities that could be compelling, and that's why we're having the conversation. But we're able to structure that first conversation in such a way that we're really trying to level the playing field. I want a candidate, and what I tell my team is, we want candidates to go into those first discussions, eyes wide open, completely understanding of the audience on everything that you would get publicly, but also the deeper stuff. Who are these guys? How do they think? Where do they really want to go? What's important to the leadership? Because I think at the end of the day, Scott, to me, it's matching the technical component with the problem is part of it. And I think that's been overemphasized. I think what really needs to get addressed, and I think what resonates, because we're both human, is, who is this outfit? How do they operate? What do they value? How would I be treated? I think it's that personal connection that people are really, really looking for. And I think is what really satisfies them. I think at the end of the day, the fit's got to be good. Comp's got to be in line. But I think what really drives people is that culture fit, it's the people fit. And if you can't get to that deeper level, I think you have a hard time really representing the client fairly in the marketplace. Let's say I'm on the market.
Yeah. I've got mad skills and I'm on the market.
You're crazy. You're ready to go.
I'm ready. I'm looking for other opportunities. Do I reach out to you and then you say, great, I also have this other side of the equation where I am working with other companies and I'm looking at their pain points and I listening to them and I hear that they have a need for X, Y, Z. Yep. Is that how it works, or does a company come to you and say, hey, I have these pain points, I'm looking for X, Y, Z, then it's back and forth, right?
It is, yeah, it's a dance. Scott, that's a great way to put it. It's very much a dance, and there is a rhythm. Actually, it comes both ways, really. Part of it is that, clients will reach out to us and say, hey, we know you're in the space, we know you're highly niche, and that's what we want to work with. You kind of think about it like a doctor. If I had to go in for heart surgery, I really don't want to go to a general practitioner. I need a guy who's not only a heart surgeon, but you've probably done a couple of these before. Yeah. So I think the niche alignment is very, very important. And so companies will find us that way, and they want to have that deeper conversation. And I think the companies want to be heard, right? They want someone to really understand. And if you haven't been in the space, you don't know the niche, you can't really understand if you haven't walked a mile in someone else's shoes. And so I think that ability to not so much empathize, but to sort of reciprocate and deeply understand what they're going through, I think is really, really important. And that also helps kind of establish that credibility right out of the gate, which is also important. So the clients, that's one side, but we've also had candidates come to us too and say, hey, look, I'm really looking. There's a couple of companies that I'm very interested in. Could you help me kind of move in that direction? And typically those are going to be more high-profile candidates, people that they're in a pretty good spot. Something is missing, and we need to sort of identify, obviously, what's missing. It's not always obvious, and I would say that's on both sides of the equation, right? I think sometimes the candidates, you got to push them to really get to the pain point and really help them to understand what's out of balance. And sometimes we have to do that with the companies too. When we interview companies, because the interview's both ways. You could want us to work with you, but I think we got to want to work with you too. We got to make sure that it's right. And sometimes when you get in these conversations, you got to push the companies a little bit. Have they really been honest with themselves? Are you really clear on what your pain point is? Are you really clear on where you're struggling? Have you really committed resources and funds to solving this problem? Do you have a plan in place in terms of management structure, leadership, that's going to be able to take this individual and to bring them on in an appropriate time frame? High performance doesn't screw around. So you got to be able to hit the ground running. So sometimes you got to push a little bit to make sure they really are in that, in that pole position and ready to go. Because sometimes, they'll come to the table, hey, we need this. And it's like, but do you really need them? I mean, maybe you do, maybe you don't. Let's talk about that a little bit. If we don't need them right away, we don't need them right away, but maybe we do need them right away. And so, and I could go on and on. I mean, sometimes there's a place for an A player. Sometimes there's a place for a B player. It kind of depends. What do you really need and why?
What obligation do you have as the company to ensure that success is achieved? You hold their hands. You do the necessary stuff, but Is there a time when it's just like, yeah, we've got to back out of this thing? We've got to jettison, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of those are, kind of one-on-one. Scott's a great question. You go in with the best intentions, of course, right? And I think from both sides. And sometimes it becomes obvious, in the first 3 to 4 weeks that the fit's just not right. In which case, I think you got to call the elephant out in the room and say, hey, look, if it ain't meant to be, it ain't meant to be. If we can't help you, dominate in your niche, if we can't help you get the right people that's going to help you take market share and move your company forward, and we can be a part of that journey, then we're not the right guys. And kind of vice versa, right? If you don't think we're doing what we need to do, then we should have that conversation. For us, it definitely is more of a white glove service. I think that's where I've always been comfortable. I think it makes sense. I think our retention rate's really, really good. But sometimes it does happen where we're just not seeing eye to eye for whatever reason. It's pretty rare, but I think it helps just be honest. But also sometimes happens too. You bring somebody on board. We've got a pretty good guarantee policy. But sometimes you bring people on board. It has happened, not often, thank God, but it's happened where people just don't pan out. And I think it's important. We're committed to working with our clients to work through that and find a way to, I say, make it right. Sometimes it's not anybody's fault, but you got to find a way to continue to solve that pain point that they have to continue to move forward. For us, as I tell the team all the time, it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? We're in this for the long haul.
Put your future hat on. What's the buzz that's out there? We're here. We're at the PowerGen. There's other conferences. What's the buzz? What's that future buzz?
Yeah, I'll tell you a big nugget, Scott, that I got out of this one so far. There was one of the talks that were given earlier, and it was said from a data center perspective, 80 gigawatts will be needed 6 years. 80 gigs, 6 years. It's kind of hard to put your mind around, quite frankly.
It's way above my pay grade.
Unbelievable, right?
I'm just telling you, I can't wrap my head around that.
How do you handle that? And so I think that, like you and I were talking offset earlier, right? And I think this, the market with gas turbines is coming back strong. We saw a lot of that in the early 2000s, late 90s, a lot of these combined cycle projects, particularly in the state of California. Some I was involved in. You were down in SCE.
Yeah, huge.
That was a big market. And then I think renewables came in, right? And I think, some of the gas stuff is kind of subsided a bit. But, I don't think we're in a position to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think we need all the power we can get. I'm a fan of all of it. I think there's gas, there's a place for nuclear, there's a place for battery storage, wind, solar, biomass. It's all needed. I think HVDC is something that we got to continue to look in.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What's that?
High voltage direct current as a way to move, large, what we say, sums of power from A to B over long distances.
Yeah.
Low line loss. Exactly right.
Yeah.
So, I think that only confirmed, and we also have a client that we're working with in the Midwest doing a data center. It's going to be a gigawatt. And it's massive. They're going to go on order for multiple, combined cycle gas turbines 3 years out. It's crazy. It's crazy.
See, what's interesting to me is, and I don't have that crystal ball. I don't. I hear the buzz that exists out there in the marketplace, and it's way above my pay grade because those are real challenges.
Oh man!
But what somebody talked to me about is, it's like, okay, I'm a utility company.
Yeah.
As a utility company, I am obligated to serve power. Right. That's my role. That's what I do in this area, in this, my service territory. That's what I do.
Right.
But as a data center too, if I have a megawatt demand and I'm getting a megawatt worth of power from the utilities, I need a megawatt of standby sitting there.
Yeah.
So there's two sides of that equation that I just said, it's a beautiful thing.
it's great,
if you're looking for an industry to sort of begin to sink your teeth, look at the power.
Oh, power is just it's what do they call it? Mission critical, right?
Mission critical.
Where are you going to go, right? One of the things I like to say on my podcast is, look, this is where we're at. Unless you're looking to go back to candles, and I don't think so because they don't charge these things. This is where we are, but it's it's a great situation to be in, right? I mean, the future's bright, the opportunities are there for everybody in so many different capacities. Give it a look. It's going to be around for this lifetime and the next. We're just excited to be a part of it. It's an awesome opportunity. Appreciate it. Yeah.
What about getting in contact? What's the best way to do that?
Hit us up. Yeah, confiogroup.com, CONFIO group.com. You can hit me up on LinkedIn as well. You can see our stuff on YouTube. ConfioGroup.com or on LinkedIn. Best way to get us.
Very good. All right, his name is Joe. Confio Group is the company. Excellent conversation. We're going to have all the contact information for Joe out on Industrial Talk, so fear not, reach out. He's one of those sage individuals that you want to connect with in a big way. All right, we're going to wrap it up on, I have to give one more plug. PowerGen, Dallas, Texas. If you're in the power business and you're not here, you're missing out. It's a big deal. So anyway, stay tuned. We will be right back.
You're listening to the Industrial Talk Podcast Network.
Great name, Joe Patch. Joe Patch the Fourth. That means there's 3 other Joe Patches out there. Very good. Confio Group. That's CONFIO Group. You know how to spell group. You need to work with individuals. Joe, his team, can find the right people. Renewable energy, clean tech recruiting. There it is, right here. I'm pointing. There's this card. That's what it says. So I have no way of doubting it. So that's what they do. Make it happen. It is the right connection to make. All his contact information will be out on Industrial Talk, as you know. So just go out there, connect, boom, done. Make it happen. All right, we're building a platform. You need to tell your story. You need to amplify your message. It is right here. We need to do a better job. Industry needs to do a better job telling their story. So go out to Industrial Talk. Let's connect. Easy peasy. Be bold, be brave, dare greatly. Hang out with Joe, and you will be changing the world. We're going to have another great conversation shortly, so stay tuned.